go have that kind of headspace to where you have to do it all, then you're not going to be able to do anything eventually. You're not going to. You can only expand so much at that point.
Hello, I'm your host, Dr. Richard Avery, and welcome to the Elite Chiro website Crushing It podcast, the chiropractic marketing podcast where we interview experienced and successful chiropractors and they share their trials and tribulations and their secrets to how they grew their successful clinic. We all know how important it is to have massive community awareness to drive an abundant number of new patients to your clinic. We also know the vast majority of those seeking out a chiropractor surge online above anything else. And that's why Elite Chiro websites have crafted the most powerful chiropractic website templates to enhance your visitor's experience and visitor to new patient conversion. In addition, only Elite Chiro websites optimize our clients for an incredible industry-leading 45 keywords on the page 1 of Google. And only Elite Chiro websites offer a keyword guarantee. In fact, we're so confident in our website and our results that we'll give you a 2-month free trial, no catches, no obligation, and no credit cards required. To get your free trial, simply visit EliteChiroWebsites.com or call 1-888-558-5054 today. Okay, docs, are you ready to crush it? Crushing it. Dr. Carolyn Griffin attended LACC and has been in practice for almost 20 years. She's not only a chiropractor, but a mother of 2 and a bikini competitor. And she has successfully managed to balance all 3.
Dr. Griffin, thank you for joining us today on the Crushing It podcast. I've talked a little bit about you in the intro, so why don't you tell us a little bit more about you and your clinic?
I've been, like you said, in practice for almost 20 years. I have grown this office for a while, and it's been a great ride. And this is actually my 3rd office that I've opened up. So my first one, I started out, I was actually an associate in an office for about 3.5 years and learned a whole lot. I was in a high volume office, and I learned a lot about headspace and what it takes to run an office. They were seeing high volume of new patients, patient visits, and things of that nature. And so here I am, a student coming out of school and into this environment, and so I didn't know anything different. Like, I didn't know what it was like to struggle. So my headspace right away was, this is what's normal. This is what chiropractors do. I didn't realize that, the majority of chiropractors see a lower volume of people. Like, there's only, like, the office I was in apparently is like the top 1%, right, of our profession. And so I learned from the best, in my opinion. I went, before I even graduated, started training with Dr. Fred Schofield. They took me to the seminars, and I trained with him from before graduation all the way for about 13 years. I think it was 2008 or 9, and so for a long time. And I learned a whole lot of what it takes to not just run a practice, but have the right headspace to continue to do what we do. And so from there, I decided, after about 3 years, I decided to open my own practice, and that was 99, I believe, and I opened my practice back then. And I was in that office for about 3 years. I outgrew it. I then opened another practice about a mile down the road, and I was in that building for about 10. And the way that my town grew over this amount of time, I felt like I was pushed kind of away from the main area of town. And so in order for me to get back into the middle of town where it was going to be successful, where it wasn't going to be a challenge, I should say, where for people to come in to see me, I made the decision to move the office. And we did that about a year ago. We did the build out, and it's been awesome. So the office I'm in now is about 2,500 square feet. I have 4 CAs and just me, no other chiropractors in the office at this point in time. Thinking I might want to bring in an associate, but it just hasn't happened as of yet. But, so it's been great, and that's about it.
Yeah, I've seen images of your clinic, and you have a beautiful clinic.
Thank you.
Yeah. So let me ask you, you're a high-level bikini model. You run a successful clinic. You market your clinic. You perform lectures. You're a guest on the Crushing It podcast. Obviously, you're extremely busy. And how do you manage a good work-life balance? And what would you tell new doctors who feel overwhelmed with starting their new clinic and getting it to grow? And what advice would you give? And how do you maintain that good work-life balance?
The first thing I would recommend, and honestly, is look at what you're doing during the day and actually take a really solid look at it, because I think people actually waste a lot of time doing things that they don't necessarily need to be doing or that may not be productive in their growth success, be it personal or professional life. And that is something that actually happened with me. Like, I realized I was giving a lot to my family and my practice. Like, that was my world. It was only those two things. It's like, family, is my husband happy? Are my children happy? And in my practice, am I giving the best care to my patients? Like, that was my idea of success. And when I realized, for me, when I turned 40, I actually realized that I didn't even recognize the person I was anymore. Like, I saw myself, I didn't even recognize myself. I thought something definitely needs to change here. Like, I wasn't the same person. And I realized if I continued down this road without any regard for myself, that I was going to eventually fail as, a wife, mother, and chiropractor. So I took a serious look at my schedule and realized I was actually wasting a lot of time watching television. That's where a lot of my spare time went. It's like, when you have Tuesdays and Thursday mornings off, it's like, okay, well, let me just chill out. I'm going to be seeing a lot of people today. Let me just kind of veg. And a lot of times we use that as a crutch. It's like, I don't have time, but you really do. It's just, what are you doing with that time? Are you, being lazy? And so I found myself being a little bit more lazy and not as productive, and I knew I needed to change it. And so that's when I made the decision to cut out television. And as soon as you cut something like that out, you free up so much time that you can do a whole lot. And then you have to realize, okay, am I just not getting up early enough to do these other things that can make myself a better person, more productive and more efficient? You free up more time. So I started getting up earlier. It's like, okay, now I found time to work out in the morning. And after work, instead of just going home, once you go home, what you tend to do is just fall into the trap of like, I don't want to leave the house. I don't want to do anything. So I wouldn't go straight home after the office. I bring my gym clothes to the office. I change here and I head straight to the gym. I have no more excuses. Like that's what my routine is. And so I'm able to work out, be productive at the office. And then when I go home, now I can really focus on my family. And that's how I did it. But, it's interesting because I was at a seminar recently and I was talking to a chiropractor. He was a young guy, I would guess maybe late 20s, early 30s. And he was asking me, how to see more people, or, he doesn't see how he can actually grow from where he's at. And just to give you some idea, he was seeing about 140 a week, which is a pretty decent number. Obviously, it's on the lower end. And but he was working way more hours than I was. And the interesting thing is he said that he saw his new patients during after hours, meaning when he was done at 7 p.m., excuse me, he would then, that's when he would schedule his new patients. So sometimes he would be in the office till 9 because he was processing new patients. So I think the other thing that I would say as far as managing your time is, what are you doing in the office that you feel like you're so busy that you can't even process a new patient? Are you that busy? Are you spending 20 minutes or 30 minutes with a patient? An adjustment doesn't take long, 30 seconds, a minute, at the most. It's like you should be able to have more time. And so I think when people fall into the trap of, well, it's going to take me an hour or two to process a new patient, plus I don't want other people to wait and blah, blah, blah. I think, you limit your amount of growth just based on how quickly you can move and what you feel you can and cannot do. So I think looking at your life and what you're doing with your time is part of it. So bottom line, time management. That's it. What are you doing?
Yeah, you make two really, really good points. And one is, you really never have time. The fact of the matter is, you have to make time. Mm-hmm. If you make time, you'll have that time. But if you keep sitting around and say, I don't have time, I have all these things to do, again, you'll never grow, you'll never succeed, and you'll never have the time.
Right.
The other thing is what I call pseudo work. A lot of people, when they're okay, you know what, I'm going to promote my clinic on social media. So they go on social media, say, for example, Facebook. Well, they think they're doing work on Facebook, but what actually they're doing is they're checking out what their friends are doing. They're making posts about whatever they're doing, their daily activities. So they're burning up time, but they're not actually being productive.
Right.
That time that you have to be productive. You have to make it, you have to work on your clinic. And the key thing is just that. You have to work on your clinic. You can't just work in your clinic.
Right.
Because if you work in your clinic, you're never going to grow it, right?
Right, exactly. And have a game plan and have people to help you. I mean, that's what your CAs are for. You want to be able to delegate the little stuff. You don't want to put everything on your plate and not trust anyone to the point where you're doing everything and they're doing, just the bare minimum of answering your phone. A CA can be very valuable in the office if you let the reins loose a bit and actually give other people things to do as opposed to, well, I don't trust anyone to do anything, so let me just do it all myself. When you go have that kind of headspace to where you have to do it all, then you're not going to be able to do anything eventually. You're not going to. You can only expand so much at that point.
Exactly. You got to let things go. You got to let others do it, and that'll help you grow your clinic exponentially. And so let me ask you this. When you graduated, what was the biggest fear you had when starting your practice, and how did you overcome it?
Well, what's interesting for me is when I graduated, before I even graduated, I was a preceptor in that office that I mentioned earlier. And, when I came out of school, I thought, okay, well, I'm now in this office, I'm learning, and then I was in there for about 2 months, and then I actually graduated from chiropractic school. And from there, that's when I became an associate in the office, and so I wasn't quite licensed. You have that gap between graduating and then taking boards, and then from boards getting your actual license. For me, from graduating in December, I didn't even get my license until the following September. So there was a 9-month gap. But being in this environment that I was in, I'm so glad that I made the choice to actually become an associate as opposed to just open my own practice, because you don't know what you don't know, like you just don't know. And I went to LACC. I went to a school that had zero philosophy. I mean, I couldn't even say the word subluxation. I was saying segmental dysfunction. I realized I didn't even know how to adjust. I was going into this office and I'm thinking, that I knew everything. And it was day 1, day 2, I realized I didn't know anything. And that was scary. And so I was so thankful that I was in this office and I was able to learn the things I learned, because I went from not knowing how to adjust, and then when you're seeing a good amount of people or volume of patients, I went from so what happened was the doc I worked for, she sent me to a Gonstead doc to hone my skills and actually teach me what to do, because I didn't know how to adjust. And so then I had practice and kept adjusting and working in her office, and then I would go back, and I think it was like 6 months later or 5 months later. No, it was 6 months later, I went back to him, and he said from, oh my God, you don't know how to adjust, to, holy cow, you now adjust like you've been out in practice for 5 years. And I was out of practice for 6 months. So not saying I'm the best adjuster in the world, but I mean, you need to be able to, that's our skill. That's our skill set. And everyone has a different skill set, and everyone's, going to be adjusting differently, but you at least have to be able to do that. And if you come out not even being able to move a bone or whatever you want to do, then you're not going to get them better. You can be the best marketer and have your office flooded with new patients and things of that nature, but if you can't get them better, then you're going to fail. So I think that was one of the smartest things for me. So your question was, what fears do I have? I actually didn't really have a ton, because I came out thinking I knew everything. Certainly I realized I didn't, but I was already in a net, so to speak, to where I was taught everything I needed right away. So when I actually opened my own practice, I had no fear at all. I had the impression that after a month out of practice, I was going to be seeing 100 a week. I just thought this is the way it goes. And then I would just grow from there. But obviously there's a whole lot more to it, which I learned as I went along. But as far as opening your own business. So as far as fear, I didn't really have that headspace.
Good, great. Mm-hmm. But let me ask you, I mean, you obviously have a very successful clinic now. But there were difficult periods that, just like anybody else, any other chiropractor or any other business, there were difficult periods in your clinic. What difficult period did you have, and how did you overcome it?
So what's interesting for me was when I ended up opening my own practice, in a 6-month time frame from when I left that office, I we bought a new home. My husband and I bought a new home. I opened my own practice, and then I got pregnant. So those are three major stressors that happened all at the same time and all within a 6-month time frame. So literally 3 months after I opened my office, 3 months after I opened my office, and here I am, ready to grow, build a practice, I get pregnant. So, men can't really relate to that. It's usually, obviously, it's the wife that gets pregnant, and it's usually a male that's in the office, and so their wife is at home. It's not a big deal. But when you're the one that's pregnant and you're the one that needs to grow the practice, and it's like, what do you do? So that was a scary moment for me, because the first thing that ran through my mind was, how am I going to grow this practice and raise a baby at the same time? Like, I didn't know what I was going to do. But again, you learn as you go along, and what I did was I just did it. I, worked all the way until a week before I delivered. I then took that time off, and I came back 2 weeks after I delivered my boy. And so I took 3 weeks off to have my child, and then I was back in the office adjusting patients. And so for me, that's what I did, and I brought him with me. And so I was literally nursing my son in between patients. I was changing diapers. I was doing all these things. And so, and I did that for a full year. And then what happened was, my husband and I and my son, when my son turned a year old, we ended up going on a family vacation. And here we were sitting on a beach. We're in Hawaii. It was a nice vacation. And we realized that my husband had literally missed our son's entire first year of life, because my husband at the time was working as an accountant for one of the big 5 accounting firms, which I think is now just the big 3, Ernst & Young. Excuse me. Yep. And so we're like, oh my gosh, every time my husband was home, my son was asleep. He'd get up early, go to work, my son was asleep. By the time my husband got home after 16 hours of working, my son was asleep. So he literally never really saw him. And so we made a critical decision right there on the beach of Hawaii. We're like, we've got to do something. Something has to change. And one of us is going to give up our career. Who's it going to be? Because for us, family was most important. It was the way that, we knew the sacrifice was going to happen. We just had to decide which direction. And since for us, chiropractic was a way of life, we decided to go in that direction. And so literally that Monday, when we got back from that vacation, my husband went into the office and gave 2 weeks notice, and has since then been my office manager to my office and Mr. Mom to our kids. So it's been pretty amazing.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
that must have been a big change for him.
Yeah, it was a big change for our entire family. But immediately what happened was my practice grew right away. Like that was like what needed to happen in order for it to happen. Again, when I was doing everything, now I'm not only just, running my own practice, but now I'm a mom and I'm taking care of my son within my practice. It was a lot. And I remember doing QuickBooks, in between patients. I was doing everything. I was like, how the heck can I grow? It's like, okay, well, now I need to go out and market and bring in new patients. But, it was just a lot going on. But as soon as my husband took over all of that, and I was absolutely able to just focus on patient care, that's when everything took off for us.
Yeah, I found that when my wife worked with me as well in our clinic, we grew exponentially as well. Right. And it was a great relationship. It brought us even closer than we were. So I found that working with my spouse was one of the best things that I could have done for our clinic, or we could have done for our clinic.
Sure.
On that note, chiropractic clinics, they're everywhere, and they're popping up all the time. Every trimester, there are new ones popping up around the corner. So what separates your clinic from your competition?
I guess I don't look at other offices as competition. Maybe I'm naive, maybe I live in a bubble, maybe I just don't think enough about it. I don't really care. Like for me, I come into my office and it is my second home, my sanctuary. It's a place that I spend the second amount of most time, in, and I have a mission and a vision of what I want to do, and I give our patients that come in the absolute best care and service that we can absolutely give them. So for me, when I don't really look at other offices around me as competition at all. Like I just see it as, there's another office, that is what it is. But I just keep doing what we're doing. I guess I don't let it enter my headspace to where I worry about it. I think once you start worrying about certain things, that becomes what you focus on. And when you focus on that, that becomes bigger. And when that becomes bigger, now it's going to affect you, So for me, yep. I just don't even think about it. I just say, you know what, here's where my office is. This is what I'm going to do. Today I'm going to be, giving the absolute best care. You know, I am a magnet for new patients. Patients want to come in, and I'm going to give the best service. And, you know, I just say, literally, I say affirmations on my way in. I have a 12 to 15 minute drive in, so everything that's, you know, in my head at the house, as I start to drive, I can literally feel my head space shifting of what I need to take care of at the office so that I'm 100% when I enter my doors. And it's like, you know, I see my CAs, they're sitting there, boom, we're ready to go, let's do this. And we just go. I don't let other people affect the way I think.
Right, right. And so you don't think you have anything that really distinguishes you?
I think what distinguishes me is this. I'm a female. I absolutely care. I give the best service. It's like when you walk into our office, the one thing that they say is we give them the most attention. We give them the most thorough intake and exam. People don't spend enough time. Not that we're spending a ton of time. It's perceived time. You know what I'm saying? So I think when you're present and you're right on and you're with that patient with the time that you're with them, you don't have to spend an hour to 2 hours with them. You can spend literally 10 to 15, maybe 20 minutes with them, and they've got it. It's the quality of time that you're spending with them. So what distinguishes me is I give them the rich experience.
Right, and I think that's really important. You know, those chiropractors that have really busy offices, sometimes they're so focused on everything that's going on about them in their office, or when the next patient's coming in, or they have to be in the next adjusting room, this and that. They don't really focus 100% on the patient that they're presently with. Mm-hmm. And patients know that. And if they don't feel, number one, if they don't feel like you're taking full care of them, you know, they'll walk. And if they do undergo care, they won't last. You know, it's really important to make sure that, one, you do a very thorough examination. I mean, I was coaching a doctor who never did an examination. I never did neurological tests or anything of that nature because he just thought that that's something you just learned in school. It didn't really work. And so he never did an examination and has an extremely quiet practice, you know. Right. Being thorough with them, making them number one, showing how, you know, much you care and how much you know, speaks volumes about your practice. And that'll spread the word amongst your community, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so when you started practice, did you have a marketing plan on how to spread your word about your clinic and grow your clinic? And if so, what did you do?
No.
Okay.
Because, you know, again, it's kind of funny because when I came out of that office, like we were seeing really high volume, a lot of new patients, and I just assumed, maybe naively again, that I was just going to be a massive success. Like, it never really entered my headspace that it was going to go any other way. So here I opened my practice. I got pregnant. Yeah, I was worried about that. But it's like, okay, I want a baby. This is great. I'm just going to do what we do. And I continued on. But honestly, like, I didn't have time because I was a new mom also to go and do talks and lunch and learns and things of that nature. So a lot of my things were like, I did all the you know, maybe advertise in a magazine or whatnot, spread the word. I mean, a lot of things were just basically, you know what, I think if I were to think back, one of the things that I believe helped me was the research I did prior to picking where I was going to open my office. And what I mean by that is, excuse me, I picked a town that was still growing, meaning I didn't pick a town that was saturated with chiropractors already, because I just knew that I didn't want to be in the town where I did my associateship. I didn't want to be all the way in LA in Orange County, which I actually considered opening up in Orange County. But I found this town that I thought was just awesome. And I loved how it was like a small town feel, but it was big enough. It wasn't so small town that you felt like you're in the Hicks. You know, it didn't have one stoplight or anything like that. And I was like perfect. I was kind of centered like far enough from LA. I'm like in the suburbs of Los Angeles. So I'm not in a big city to where it's kind of dirty and all this. It's a brand new growing town. There was only about 52 chiropractors. The town had about 50,000 people, and it was growing. And it was growing exponentially. I mean, houses were popping up left and right. So I honestly believe that the research I did prior to opening my practice, okay, this is where I'm going to go because of these reasons, you know, the demographics as far as the type of people that were going to be in, their average income. I took into all that into consideration. I said, Santa Cruz is where I'm going. And that's when I did it. And I believe it served me well because I didn't do a ton of marketing, honestly. I didn't have time. I didn't have the money. I mean, I just didn't. I didn't have the money. I just started my practice. I didn't have the time. I have a new baby. And so what I ended up doing was just had the right headspace, was in the right spot at the right time. And because of the influx of new people, homes being built and everyone filling those homes with families, buying the homes, I should say, our office automatically grew.
Great. And, that's an important lesson for all you new doctors out there. I know you're excited to open up a practice and you just want to get going and healing the world, but you really have to do your due diligence when opening up a practice. Things like, population, expendable income, disposable income, highway access, signage, visibility. You have to take all those things into consideration and a lot more into consideration before opening up a practice. Just don't jump at the first opportunity, some available space. Oh, this would be perfect. You have to do your due diligence, because if you don't do your research on the surrounding area, the community, how many chiropractors are in the area, that's going to really affect your success, your growth. So do your due diligence. Really, really important.
I agree.
Now, doctor, you mentioned you didn't do a lot of marketing, and obviously, you have a successful practice now. Obviously, you were spreading the awareness, the branding of your clinic. Can you say or mention one or two marketing techniques or campaigns that you did that you found that drove the most number of patients to your office?
I believe it's community outreach, getting your face in front of people, doing corporate talks, dinner talks. I do a wonderful event called Women, Wine, and Wellness that I've now packaged in, can sell to docs if they want it. And those types of things, I think, create the most amount of qualified new patients for you based on the fact that most of them have a job. You know what I mean? You're not just marketing at a swap meet to where you don't know what's going to be coming around the corner. But I think when you put yourself out there as the expert and as the go-to person for health and wellness, then you're able to get in front of a group of people that can actually hear your message. They now realize, okay, you know what? This isn't just a person that I found in a phone book or Googled or Yelp, or maybe some people have some nice things to say. They're actually hearing you. They're actually able to come up to you afterwards and ask you a few questions. And if they resonate with you, if you get along with them, then you know what? They're going to sign up, and that's another way. Now, maybe they don't sign up with you right then and there, but that seed is planted. They know who you are, and the more face time you get, the better. I really think that the more times that you can go out and do talks and screenings, the better.
Yeah, that face-to-face communication, that interaction, is probably one of the best ways to build that rapport with potential patients. Mm-hmm. If you build that rapport and you bond, then they're naturally going to come in. And like you said, if they don't come in right away, which they might not necessarily, you have to put them into a messaging feed where you can be in constant communication with them. Capture their email address or phone number or whatever the case may be. And periodically, send them information about your clinic. Make sure that you're always top of mind, because like I always say, if you're if your clinic is top of mind with them, as soon as they need a chiropractor, naturally, you're going to be the first office that they call. Right? Exactly. Now, when dealing with a consultation,
excuse me,
how do you increase the likelihood of that consult undergoing care? Tends to be a lot of skepticism when undergoing, when a patient or a consult comes into the office, and they may, you may need a certain degree of, persuasion, obviously. Mm-hmm. What would you say is the best way or that you find to convert that potential patient into a patient?
I think the most important thing, well, there's probably two. First, you need to create that rapport that you mentioned earlier. You need to make sure you're on the same level with that potential patient if they're just a consult at that point in time. And then you need to be able to listen and find out what they're actually saying. Because, like we know in chiropractic, it's not just about, oh, my low back is killing me or I've got neck pain and headaches. It's my back pain is keeping me from picking up my child, or my back pain is keeping me from going to the gym and I'm not able to lose the 100 pounds I need to lose, which is making me unhappy. There's people have other goals of what they actually want. And maybe what your job is to actually figure out what that is so that you can then turn that consultation around into more of a goal for them to get back into the gym, as opposed to let's just get rid of your low back pain. Because, or else you're just going to, once that back pain is gone, then they're gone. So as soon as you find out what is their actual motivation, then you can actually help that patient, or you can actually get that patient to first sign up or convert, and then eventually get them under care, and then stay under care for a longer period of time than just until their back pain goes away. Because we all know that that's just part of the puzzle there.
Right, and you know, before I retired, one of the things that I always said was you want to connect that consult's pain with an emotion, because just like anything else, people don't like to be sold to. People like to buy. And when you buy, that's an emotional attachment, right? Being sold to is something totally different. So in order to, one of the biggest factors to convert a consult into a patient is to connect that pain with an emotion, for sure.
Yes. I think that's pretty much the only way to do it these days, because people are way more savvy than they were, 20, 30 years ago. And when you're able to, and also I think that's just part of life. Like, we're so busy, and if you're having to go into the office 3 times a week, what else is going to drive them to continue? You need to make sure that you're setting goals with them. Okay, what's the next thing? Now that you're in the gym, do you want to start lifting more weight, heavier weight? What's your next goal? And you want to continue that conversation. It's not just, it ends with whatever you figured out that first visit.
Absolutely. I can't agree with you more. Now, in terms of maintenance, how do you maintain patient compliance? Because I know that was always a challenge until I figured out a way to make sure that the patient maintains. Because one of the biggest things is, oh, you know what? I feel great. You got me out of pain. I don't need you anymore. Meanwhile, we all know that getting a patient out of pain is totally different from actually stabilizing the issue to prevent further problems. So how do you maintain patient compliance?
I think, again, it's, back in the day, I think today's patient is much different than it was 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, like when I started. I remember back in the day, we would just, once you got a patient under care, it was like, okay, we just kind of keep going, but we don't ever monitor or touch base. It's just assumed that they're going to continue. And that's just not the way it works today. And I think one of the things that doctors tend to do is they drop the ball when it comes to doing exams or re-x-rays or just saying, let's do a progress report. I think the more that you're able to stay connected, that creates more bonding with the patient, because once you start a patient under care, if you go 3 times a week for, say, 12 weeks, and they start going, after like the second, third week, it's just like a routine and you don't really say too much, but you need to have that rebond or that reconnect. And that's what is great about progress reports and re-x-rays and things of that nature. So when it comes to a maintenance patient, what I like to do is just make sure that I have those things set in place and that we have, okay, we're going to be doing a progress report, we're going to then be doing a re-exam, a re-x-ray, and then you're actually saying to them, okay, here's where we are and this is what we need to do. Because quite frankly, for a person to continue to come in, they need to be getting something out of it. And maybe what that is that they are able to continue doing what they want to do. If they decide that they're not wanting to continue for whatever reason, then you can say, okay, let's, put you, if you want to like stop care or not continue in the office, let's just have you come back in, say, 3 months or 4 months, and we'll do another x-ray, and we'll see if your way worked better than mine. And that way, a lot of times what we notice is that their subluxations return, blah, 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 because they weren't under maintenance care. Or their symptoms come back, and then they realize, yep, you're right, doc, I need to continue. So a lot of times, the answer is right there in front of them when they stop care. It's not always the best choice. But you should absolutely touch base and make sure that you have systems in place to where you're rebonding and rechecking the patient and then reestablishing new goals so that we can move to the next level. Because obviously once you reach one goal, you don't just stop. Like, just like us in our personal life, when you hit a certain goal, you have another one. It's not like everything just stops right there. The same thing happens in your office with patients.
Right. And doing those re-exams obviously allows you to assess the patient, find out how they're improving, and if you have to modify their treatment protocol. But at the same time, you can take that time to, in a sense, re-educate or educate the patient or remind them of how important chiropractic is, why maintenance is important, and things of that nature. It's a good time to spend quality time re-educating the patient, because over time, they may forget during the course of care. Because in my approach, I never constantly bombarded the patient with chiropractic information. If you constantly bombard them every single day they come in, there's going to be a certain degree of resentment and apprehension about coming in. Mm-hmm. But if you periodically do it, they're going to be more receptive to your message. And again, that time when you do your re-exam, you can kind of reiterate what you said in a more concentrated way. So I think it's really important for that reason as well.
Right.
So another question is, in regards to referrals, how do you ask for referrals? I know some chiropractors that I've coached especially, they said, well, you know what, we feel desperate if we ask for referrals, like we're desperate for new patients and stuff. How do you ask for referrals? Do you bonus them for the referrals, or what's your approach?
For me, when I do a progress report or a re-exam, I ask a question if there's anyone, because at that point they're feeling better. Most of their complaints have subsided at that point, or whatever drove them to come see me in the first place. And so I use it as a conversation or a dialogue with them. I'm not afraid to ask. My opinion is if you don't ask, you don't get. I mean, it's just, and I don't feel like it's desperate. I think it's, if your headspace is in the right spot, if you know what your intention is, that you want to serve and help more people, then if somebody's coming in with neck pain and their neck pain starts to go away, what I like to say is, do you know anyone that has neck pain that could use our help? Because obviously, a lot of people think that chiropractic can help with low back pain or whatever, but they may not know that it can help get rid of neck pain or headaches. And look at what it's done for you. So if you know anyone in your life that could use our services, definitely spread the word and let them know that I'm here to help. And so that's one of the ways, is just whatever their complaint is, do you know anybody with neck pain, headaches, back pain, whatever, digestive issues, sinuses, then let them know about us and that we can help, because that's the way I do it. And do I bonus them? I don't, because, definitely, I believe that's capping and steering. You're not supposed to, we want to always, follow the rules. But we definitely want to make sure that we ask, but I ask not every time they come in. I think there's a tactful way to do it. I think there's an appropriate way to do it. And it's not every single time they walk in the door, because that would be annoying to me. So if I were the patient. So I do it when I find that the times are appropriate. If they're coming in saying, oh my gosh, I can't believe how much better I slept last night, that is awesome. Do you know anyone else that has, that could use chiropractic because look how well you slept? If they knew what you knew, imagine what their life could be like. Help spread the word, something along those lines.
That's a great approach. I know some doctors, what they do is they talk about referrals right at the consult or ROF, just to kind of drop the seed.
I've done that, and I do that on occasion, and I test the waters with it, meaning, I think everything in life is situational. I don't think that you should be cookie cutter with every single person that walks in the door. I think there's a certain skill when it comes to reading a person, but what I like to do is, after I give them an adjustment, or as I start to go through, maybe it's a second visit, not necessarily the first or second visit, but I'll say, when we start to help you and you're feeling better and your headaches go away, all I ask is that you spread the word. And they'll say, oh yeah, for sure. Because, right there, I'm letting them know that this is going to happen. This is going to be, a great journey for them to go through. It's going to get them to the point where it's like, you know what, I know the headaches aren't going to be gone after 3 visits. It takes time to make structural change, or it starts to feel better. You know how it is. It's not maybe gone, but it's on the way to going away. And you want them to stick with the game plan that you've already set out for them, their adjustment plan. But I always like to say, you know what, when we help you, all we ask is that you spread the word. And it just makes it easy and simple. It's not like, tell your mom, tell your dad, get everyone in. It's like, good Lord. Like, I couldn't even make myself say that. But I think there's a tactful way and a tasteful way to be able to ask for it. And that's the way I do it.
For sure, and you make an important point. Like, your mindset can't be when you ask for referral that you're sounding desperate.
No.
You're not. You became a chiropractor to help as many people as you can live a healthy life. And that's a great way, a great mechanism to get more people to come in so that you can help. So asking referrals is not a sign of desperation. It's a sign that you want to help as many people live an active, healthy lifestyle. So get out of that desperate kind of frame of mind,
right,
especially as a new student, because you have no money, you have a lot of debt, and you want to make money, obviously. So you gotta put all that aside. Think of yourself always as a successful chiropractor. If you put your mindset and thinking yourself as a successful chiropractor, you'll come off completely different, and you won't come off as a desperate chiropractor.
Right.
Now, Doctor, I know you're very successful. You have a lot of experience, but going back in time, if you could start all over again, what would you have done differently to make your clinic more of a success?
What would I have done differently? That's a great question. I honestly feel like I did it right. I honestly feel like I did it right, and I'm so glad that I can say that. Because I'll tell you something, what I didn't do, and I almost did it wrong. I would have regretted the way my way of going into it. My husband talked me out of it, thank God. So my whole game plan was, again, I came from this big office and I wanted to, get a loan for $100,000 and let me open this amazing office and blah, blah, blah. And I would have just blown the entire wad, right? I would have been in debt. What I ended up doing was, a friend of mine, when I moved into this town, said, hey, this doc is moving offices and wants to know if anyone wants to take over. And I said, well, I'll go drive by and I'll see where it is. And I drove by and it was a total dump, honestly. It was so bad. And I mean, there was milk cartons in the fridge from 4 months, cigarette butts outside. It was just ghetto. It was so nasty. And from a woman's perspective, I'm like, there's clearly dudes that didn't care living in this place and working in this place. And so I was like, oh, hell no, I'm not going to be in this place at all. And my husband said, hold on, this is, he's still working for his company. And he's like, when I get off work, we're going to go by. Let me check it out. I said, okay, you can check it out, but I'm telling you right now, it ain't happening. And I'm going to be getting a loan and I'm going to be opening up my own. But if you want to come and waste your time and look at it, feel free. So he ends up coming over. The doctor lets us in, and I'm showing him around, and I just have this disgusted look on my face. I probably look so mean and bad and snobby, but I mean, I have a certain standard, right? Like I want to have a nice environment for my patients to be in, and so my husband, when we were done, we walk out, and he goes, listen, I know this is not your ideal place, but you need to start somewhere. We don't want to get in debt, and we want to start things slowly and but smart, right? And so he said, I think the guy wanted $20,000 for the whole thing. And it basically what that meant was I got the sign on the window or above the building. It was existing place. So I mean, I would still be paying rent. I'd be taking over this guy's rent, which was cheap as dirt because of the location. And I had the X-ray, which was an old dinosaur. It was crazy. Like I think I had to wear a gas mask just to process X-rays. Terrible, like all this stuff, and he had like just the worst of the worst, honestly. And so and no tables, but like flat benches, and which was fine because I can now adjust, but it wasn't ideal for, especially once I got pregnant. Anyway, my husband said he talked me into it. So we gathered our $20,000 and we did it, and it was turnkey. So I got from the day we said, okay, exchanged the money, here's your keys. I think I cleaned the place, scrubbed it from head to toe, and then I opened my doors. I think it was like a 3 or 4 day turnaround, and then boom, I was ready for business. Of course, I had nobody coming in, and I had to get things rolling. But from there, by third month, I was paying my own rent, and then I just kept growing. And so what I ended up doing was, okay, now I'm paying my own rent by month 3, which is like very difficult to do. And then once I earned more money, okay, now I bought my first really good table, and then I bought my next thing, and then I bought my next thing. Like I grew into it. I didn't just load it. Does that make sense? Like I didn't just blow the wad and from the get-go, right out of the gate where I had nothing. I earned it, I guess is the way to say it. And so I built it up, and then we stayed there, like I said, for 3 months. I outgrew it. The parking was crappy, and of course I didn't like the location, so I moved it after about 3 years into a bigger location, which served us well for the time I was there. And so would I have done that differently? No, because I really think we did it smart. I didn't go in debt over this thing. And I was able to, pay everything off as I did it. I didn't, get stupid with the money. So. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, too, what happens is, and I know this happened to me personally. I had bought into a practice. I dropped like 140 grand on this practice. And I had to do all this extra build out because the place, it was kind of run down in a sense. I mean, it had a high patient base and stuff like that. But then, you know what? As soon as I walked in, and not that I'm a bad guy or anything like that, I had no personality or whatever, but over, I don't know, I think it was like 60, 65% plus, of the patients dropped out of care.
Right.
So, because they were so used to that, the other doctor, then they just didn't, the transition was difficult for them. So I had to end up building my practice back up again, where I could have just started from scratch, have a low overhead,
Right.
and build it to where I didn't have that massive debt, right? So that's a great way of going. You know, keep that debt low.
Yeah.
Keep that debt low.
Exactly.
So my last question, what parting piece of advice can you give to students that are about to graduate and start their own chiropractic career?
You know, I just actually had this conversation with a student this past weekend. I went to a seminar, and the piece of advice I gave him was to actually become an associate. I mean, I know that there's like a negative stigma or negative connotation attached to being an associate these days, like chiropractors eat their young and, you know, they're slave labor or whatever it is. And you know what? Maybe that's true to an extent, but I honestly think there's some value, something to be said about not just paying your dues, but about learning from an established chiropractor that can show you the ropes so that you're not, again, dumping a ton of money into a situation that you don't even know what you really want. You really have no clue. And I say that lovingly, I really do, because, you know, obviously, you know, we spend a lot of money on our education, but we've all graduated from chiropractic school. We all know what we're really like. We don't really know that much once we enter the real world, even though you've gone to all these, you know, clubs and you've visited a million offices and you've shadowed all these doctors. You think you know, but again, you don't know until you actually get into it, right? So I really think there's something to be said about not just how to adjust and, you know, how to work with flow, but get in and hone your skills, make the mistakes in that office, figure things out, and then you'll realize when you get out what you want to do and what you don't want to do, and then you can open up your practice the way that you should and want to, as opposed to, I think I want to do this, but maybe not that, and, you know, you really don't know. You know, are you going to have rehab? Are you going to have open adjusting? Are you going to have this or that? Just enter these offices and become an associate, learn the ropes, maybe for a year or two. You don't have to do 3 like me. I just had a transition with my husband going from school to, you know, whatever. We had our own thing going. And so clearly I was in a little bit longer than I wanted to be. But again, I was being smart about keeping income coming in. And but I really think that a chiropractic student, if you can actually learn the ropes in an existing office, I think that's going to save them 5 years of it being figured out on their own, and they'll be ahead of the game.
I agree, and that's a great approach because, you know, you can take the good stuff that the doctor teaches you, what works, and enhance on them, and where their negatives are, where their deficits are, you can avoid them right away, right from the start. So that's a great way of learning how to open a successful clinic and, you know, take your clinic to the next level and then, really quickly.
Yeah, exactly, and then you can figure out, where do I actually want to open? Let's do some research. I mean, when you are, you know, why would you want to put that kind of stress on yourself? I need to graduate. I need to open a practice. I need to get a loan. I need to do this. I need to do that. You know, if you just enter an office, now you're getting all this other experience while you're doing research on the other end of where you want to be, figuring out how to get a loan. Now you can take your time a little bit, and it's not such a big stress as opposed to rushing into a big mistake.
Yeah, because I'll tell you, stress can bring that paralysis, right, where you just freeze and you just crumble, right?
Sure.
So if you can avoid a lot of stress, to a certain degree, stress is good, but if you can avoid overwhelming stress, you'll only benefit and thrive, right?
Exactly.
Well, Dr. Griffin, thank you so much for joining us on the Crushing It podcast. And if anybody wants to contact you, what's the best way to contact you?
Facebook message, just easier.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, again, thank you so much, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us today on the Crushing It podcast. If you have any questions or comments, you can reach us at contact us at elitechirowebsites.com or make a post on our Facebook fan page at facebook.com/elitechirowebsites. And remember, if your website is not working for you and driving you new patients, or you're in need of a website, take advantage of our 2-month free trial offer today. Just go to elitechirowebsites.com or call 1-888-558-5054.